presentation to the Clearwater Home League and Men's Fellowship Club of my life in Japan by Major Ted Morris. We had a little glitch on the recording of the audio, and I'm going to fill in the earlier blanks as best I can. Major Morris started out talking about Japan, the country, and we saw a map of Japan, and he indicated the 4 major islands that make up the country of Japan, and besides those are several hundred small islands as well. In Japan, the oldest human bones discovered were as old as 18,000 years. Around 400 AD, the first emperor was established. The emperor's parents were thought to be the sun god and human, and he was then thought to be God, as were most emperors. In 1543, the first Europeans arrived in Japan. They were Portuguese, and the Portuguese did bring bread to Japan. Japan today is a country of 126 million people. Compared to the United States at 327 million, they have 1/3 of the population of the United States, but they only have 1/20th of the land space of the United States. So a very crowded island. 80% of Japan is mountain, so the people really live on 20% of the land. After the war, and you can see some of the post-war destruction on the slide, there was a great need in Japan, and Major Morris's parents, both as young adults, felt a calling to Japan. Major told of his mother having dated another individual who also had a calling to Japan, and when she started dating Major's father and found out he had a calling to Japan, she began to recognize that maybe she had a calling as well. In one of their appointments in Texas, they were out in the car and listened to a quartet from Japan singing a song about the Macedonian call. And at the end of the song, they made an appeal that if someone felt that God was calling them to Japan, that they were needed in Japan. And they accepted that as an endorsement of the calling of God and began preparation to answer that call. They left the United States and went to Japan when Major Ted was 3 years old, and he had a younger brother who was about 6 months old. The boat trip was about 2 weeks, and they took up their appointment in Japan as Corps officer. And Major remembers their closet bunk beds, and particularly Major also talked about going to school and described his commute to school, and that's where we'll pick up on the narration by Major Morris.
The 8:02 train that went to a station called Kyosei. It was about 8 stops. We'd get off at the station before Kyosei called Higashikurume. We'd get off and we'd walk about a half a mile to our school. It took about an hour and a half each day to school and from school, and I began that trip when I was 5 years old. Now, I didn't travel by myself. My parents entrusted me two other Salvationist missionary kids who were high school kids into whom my life was entrusted. I don't know if I trust my kids or high school kids, but they taught me to go to school, and then when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I taught my brother that same way. And so we would travel to school, and then when our youngest brother Steve was born and was of school age, we would teach him the routes. And I say that to you because for 9 years of going to school, the bus route has never changed. It's the same bus, the same route, and I could tell you, and I took Pam there, actually, when we visited. I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. But that was the school we went to, a very nice Christian school called Christian Academy in Japan, about 400 students. The teachers were missionaries. Most of the kids were missionaries. I keep in touch with my classmates now. We're like cousins. We all grew up together. We know each other's families. And of us, I graduated in a class of about 45 students. Of those 45 students, 15 of us all started 1st grade together. And so we're very, very close, very, very tight. Now, this is an embarrassing picture. Major Pam told me I had to show this to you, not because of the 3 people in the bathtub, which are myself, my 2 brothers, but this is a Japanese bathtub in our home. And what would happen is, this pole here is exhaust, and you had a stove in this part of the bathtub. And so you would light the stove. It was a gas-burning stove. You light the stove, and the stove had would heat up the water. And there were 2 holes in this piece of wood here that goes down here. There are 2 holes there, one above the other, and the stove would would suck in the water from the bathtub, which is cold, heat that water up, and then push that water out into the stove. And so you start your bath water probably, hours before you plan to take a bath. And you would place 2x4s on top of this box here, so the water would become hot and steamy. But as you know, heat rises and cold doesn't. So when it became time for a bath, you couldn't just get in the bathtub because the bottom would be freezing, the top would be hot. So you get these 2x4s and stir it like you're stirring mashed potatoes in a bin. You stir the water up and get the water at the same temperature, and then you get in. Now, the Japanese never got soap in their bathtubs, because the way you bathe over there, and many Japanese still have bathtubs like this in their homes, and you would bathe outside the bathtub and shampoo and shower and everything, and after you're rinsed off and you're totally clean, then you get in the bathtub. That's why everyone in the same family can use the same water, because the water is clean. So that's and don't tell my brothers if you see them that you've seen them in the bathtub, because now, Japanese or not, this is the participation part of the show, the program. I'm going to show something. You tell me whether you think this is Japanese or not. Okay? Sushi, is it Japanese or not? It is Japanese. Sushi is raw fish. It's good for you. It's delicious. You have to get a taste for it. If you go to a sushi place, you got to find the ones that are good and the ones that aren't good. But sushi is great. How about karaoke? Is that Japanese or not? What do you think? No? Well, actually, karaoke is Japanese. It comes from, in fact, when I was a high school student or a college student, I'd hear drunk people singing in bars karaoke, and I used to think that karaoke was nothing but for drunk people. But then I came to the States and realized they do it in church. Karaoke actually is a word called karaoke, okay? Karaoke comes from 2 words in Japanese, one called karappo, which means empty. Karappo means empty, and oke is the beginning of the word orchestra. So karaoke means empty orchestra. You have no orchestra, and that's what karaoke is. It's really karaoke in Japanese. So karaoke is Japanese, and you don't have to be drunk to do it. How about Hyundai? Is Hyundai Japanese or Hyundai not Japanese? Not. Hyundai is Korean, okay? So if you have a Hyundai, you have a Korean vehicle. How about Mitsubishi? Is that Japanese or not? It is Japanese. The word Mitsu means 3. And Bishi is a word for diamond. And so Mitsubishi literally means 3 diamonds. And so that's a Japanese word, actually. Now, how about Atari? Atari is a game system that you may have heard about as a young person. Is Atari Japanese or is it not Japanese? What do you think? Actually, the word Atari is Japanese, but the company is American. Some guys here in America wanted to make a gaming company, and they knew a couple Japanese words, and so they chose the word Atari. Now, when I was a kid, I used to buy bubble gum, like you'd buy the bazooka bubble gum, and it was the same stuff, just had Japanese wrapping on it. And in that bubble gum, there was a piece of paper that had a picture of an arrow shooting a target. If the arrow hit the target, it was called Atari, which means you hit the target. And I would get a free piece of bubble gum. If it missed the target, if I got a piece of paper, most of them, of course, miss the target, it's called Hazure, which means you missed the target. So whenever I see Atari, I think of bazooka bubble gum and trying to win the target. But Atari does mean you hit the target. That's what that means in Japanese. How about ramen? Is ramen Japanese or not? Any thoughts on that? Ramen noodles. Ramen noodles is Chinese, actually, and it was brought to Japan about 1859. So a lot of people, noodles now are Japanese. Generally speaking, very broad speaking, rice dishes are often Japanese dishes. Noodle dishes are generally Chinese dishes. Now, of course, Japanese have lots of noodles, and the Chinese have lots of rice. But generally speaking, your rice dishes are Japanese, and your noodle dishes come from China. How about wasabi? If you go to a Japanese restaurant, you will have this green radish stuff called wasabi. Any idea if wasabi is Japanese or not? Yes, it is Japanese. Actually, if you go to a restaurant, you may see stuff like this. Generally speaking, wasabi is too expensive to have in Japanese restaurants. Wasabi actually comes from the Japonica wasabi root, and it costs about $4 an ounce for wasabi. So what you get if you go to a Japanese restaurant that still will take your head off if you eat it, it's usually horseradish mixed or green flavored horseradish. That's very, very. I can't have. Meiji Pam loves it, but I can't do it because if you have sinus problem, eat one of those. It will take care of it. How about these things are called pot stickers? You may have seen them in Japanese and Chinese restaurants. They're called gyoza. Is that Japanese or is that Chinese? It is Chinese. Pot stickers are Chinese. You get them at Chinese restaurants and things like that. How about chopsticks? Japanese or Chinese? Where do they come from?
Chinese.
Chopsticks came from China and were brought to Japan about the time of Moses. So they've been in Japan for lots and lots of years. In fact, because we're talking about chopsticks, let's play with some chopsticks now. Pull out your chopsticks. You've got right in front of you there. We're going to have a chance to have some fun with chopsticks. Now, as you see from the diagram, the way you hold them is to hold one of them like you're holding a pencil. Now these are bamboo chopsticks. So the best way is to, like you're holding a pencil, you hold one and then you slide the other one kind of right beside it. And you want to kind of have your index finger and your middle finger kind of pivoting the chopsticks. Now, children often, with the small hands, use the chopsticks close to the end, which is fine. And some people will use chopsticks in the end like this. In fact, they have chopsticks that are this long used for cooking as well. Now, for the next minute or so, what I'd like you to do is take your bowl of, what are these? Beans, your bowl of beans, and using your chopsticks, try to transfer a bean from one bowl to the other bowl. Picking it up and moving it to the other bowl. We're not going to give you a time limit, but that will give you a chance to have some fun. Just have some fun with that for just a few minutes. And now, this is not a game that we made up. This is a game that Japanese adults love to play because they love to practice their chopstick mastery as well. So try to pick them up, pick the beans up in one bowl, move them to another bowl.
How did you go?
How are we doing? Doing good? We tried to get the chopsticks that weren't too pointed. The Japanese like to use ones that come to a real point, like a pencil point. Those are really, really hard. These are average size chopsticks because they're not square on the end. Great way to lose weight, someone said. Yes, that's what we feel that too. Okay, just want to give you a chance. You can keep doing that if you like. I want to look at some Japanese language for a few minutes here. The language is very, very complicated. They have two separate alphabets, and then they have Chinese characters. This is called hiragana. These are simple letters. Each of these have no meaning, but they have a sound. The first one I learned was this one. It's pronounced no. This one's to. This one's so. This one's ko. This one's o. So they just have sounds, and put together they make phonetic sounds. Now, and there's about 64 of these you memorize. Now, they have a similar alphabet. The same sounds are written like this. Any English word, any word that's not Japanese in origin is used, this alphabet uses that word, this kind of alphabet. So, for example, my name in Japanese will be written something like this. Wait. So my name, this is a mistake, by the way. That's not Japanese. Both first and last. My name is pronounced Tedomorisu. You say it fast, Tedomorisu. So each of the Tedomorisu. So my name is pronounced Tedomorisu. So that's how you it's all phonetic, it's all sounds. And they use this kind of alphabet for any kind of a foreign word. So, but they use the other alphabet, this one here for all Japanese words. And then they have what they call kanji. Kanji is really Chinese writing that Japanese have used and adapted to their language. So if you see something that uses this kind of writing and this kind of writing and this kind of writing together is probably Japanese. I've tried to write up here for you something that's in Japanese. This says, Nihongo de kakimashou, which means let's write in Japanese. And so this is the word for Japanese, and this is write, and these are these other characters. So let's write it. Okay, this one here. Here's a word that you may recognize. You ever heard the term kamikaze? Kamikaze. You've heard the word from the war, kamikaze. Okay? Kami is the word God. Kaze is the word wind. So kamikaze are actually wind gods, men who were, they believe, guided by the wind, and of course they flew their planes into our things. Now, actually they were not, that was actually a translator who got these words and called them kamikaze, because in Japanese it's pronounced differently than that. So that's really a word. And if you go to a hibachi restaurant where they serve it in front of you, a lot of times the guys will wear these headbands that will have that written on it. If you see a headband with a red sun, it probably says kamikaze on it. This is the character for hand, te. This is the character for open, which is karate. 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 Karate is karate. It means fighting with open hands. And so that's what that means. The Salvation Army flag. This is the character for salvation. This is a character for world. This is a character for army. The army that saves the world. Kyusei-gun is the Salvation Army in Japanese. This is a character for fire. This is a character for blood. And so that's the Japanese there. Now, let's write in some Japanese. So turn your placemat over, grab a pencil if you would, and I'll show you a couple characters so you can say that you actually can write some Japanese. If you look at my planner, you'll notice this character a lot. This is the character for person. It's dipped in two strokes, one down this way, one down that way. Person is called hito. And so in my planner, rather than write P-E-R-S-O-N, I write this. Because it's a lot easier to write that person, this way. Now, so you know what person is. What do you think this means? People. So person is hito, people is hitobito. So the way you say person and people in Japanese is person. Because they have no plural. Japanese has no plural. And so person, that's people. And so you'll see that in my planner as well. So you can do that. Now, I want to show you, here's a fun one. Now, in Japanese, you cannot draw the letters, you write them. In other words, the order of writing them is crucial. So first of all, you do a cross. Has to be a cross first. And then you do down, like a cross. And then you start the left-hand side and do one at an angle. The right-hand side, another angle. That is a word pronounced ki, which means tree. Kind of looks like a tree, doesn't it? Sort of, okay? Ki is tree, so that's a tree. Now, likewise, yes ma'am? You can't for something as simple as this, but for the very complicated ones, it's easy to see. But for these, you can't really tell. But they can tell you if you draw. For example, I'll show you in a minute how you can do it the wrong way. Okay, if that's a tree, what do you think this is here? It's woods. Woods. And woods is pronounced Hayashi. Hayashi is woods. Okay? Now, you get this pattern. Okay, this is the truth. I'm not making this up.
We believe you.
Thank you. You have no choice, do you? That's pronounced mori. It's a forest.
And it's that little?
The little one, you put them small because they're all about the same size. Okay, so you put the smaller you do, the more you do, and that's mori, which is a forest. Now, here's one. Toward the bottom of your paper, write this one. Go with a tree, okay? Do it to a tree again. Across, down, and left, and right. Okay, you got a tree. We're going to add something to that tree. We're going to add a root. Now, a tree with a root, with a tail on it, is root, but also means ancestor. Okay? Now, above that, now this is how you can make a mistake. When you draw a box in Japanese, you don't draw a box. You always start with the upper left-hand corner, down. The second stroke is the top and the right. You put whatever's going to be inside the box next, and you close it at the bottom of the box. This is a character for sun. Sun. S-U-N. Sun. Or spiritually. So this is a character for Japan, whose roots, the ancestry comes from the sun, and that's the word Nihon, or Nippon, which means Japan. In their very name of their country, they acknowledge their belief that they come from the sun. Their roots come from the sun. So when I say Japanese language is Nihongo, which is the sun ancestry language. So that's just some brief writing. You got some writing there for you. So that's brief characters. And we're going to spend, I got a video for you. And if you have to leave early, I certainly do understand. It's about a 20-minute video. Yes, sir.
Is it true that your dad could read and write in the ancient Japanese?
My father took language study. He could read. The question was whether my father could read and write in the ancient Japanese. My father could speak fluently. He preached in Japanese. He taught in Japanese. He could read pretty much everything. He could read a newspaper, read basic Japanese. He could not write. He figured that it was most important for him to read and speak, and he just wasn't able to learn how to write. So he would have secretaries write for him, but he would dictate them. But he was fluent in the verbal language. When Major Pam and I were cadets, we were at the training college in Atlanta, and then Commissioner Paul Rader was the guest. And he was a territorial commander then, and he was there talking about Korea, because he spent many years in Korea. And so he was sitting at the table that then Major and Mrs. Cooper were sitting at, And you remember this, don't you, Major Commissioner? And so Major Pam, who's Cadet Pam, was dressed in a kimono, and she was serving the table. She was serving the head table. And so the Raiders and the Morrises, we've known each other for years, because I grew up with their kids, and they grew up with my kids, and, where our kids grew up. And so Commissioner Raider found out that Pam and I were dating. So he said to the principal, call her over here. And so she came over to the table, and he took her by the hand and pulled her down to his level, and he said this, "You'll never really know Ted unless you visit his country." And she said, "Thank you, Commissioner." So about 5 years later, we went to Japan. I took Pam there, so you'll see in here pictures, he's about 30 years old, pictures of us, and actually her sister Paula, who some of you know, is going to be in this as well. So let's see how this works. I'll narrate this for you a little bit. Japan, I said, is a very, very small country, but very, very crowded. It's 80% mountains. And so only about 20% of the land mass can be inhabited because of the mountains. The time there, by the way, is 1:03 a.m. because that was the time in the States, but in Japan it was actually in the afternoon on March 15, 1991. That's what that means. And so most people live in the cities. Some people live in the country, but it's very hard living in the country in Japan. We lived in the city called Tokyo. Now Tokyo and its surrounding areas is about 36 million people. Let me say that again. 36 million people live in the city of Tokyo today. So to compare that, if everyone in Florida and everyone in Alabama and everyone in Georgia all moved to Pinellas County, that gives you a feel how crowded Tokyo is. So it's very, very crowded. Lots of mountains. They drive on the left-hand side of the road. And because there's lots of mountains, and Japan is a volcanic island. So Mount Fuji that you see in front of you is a volcanic mountain. And because it's a volcanic island, and volcanic mountains, Mount Fuji is dead, by the way, but it was a volcanic mountain, there's lots of rivers, lots of streams, gorgeous places. And because there's active volcanoes in Japan, there's also sulfur hot springs. This is a resort area that has sulfur springs. In fact, the backside of this mountain has nothing but hotels. People can go to the hotels and take baths in the sulfur spring water. They smell like rotten eggs, but it's supposed to be very good for you, kind of like the fountain of youth. Well, at this place, we went to a place here where you can actually hard boil an egg in the steam of the hot springs. The steam itself is about 260 degrees Fahrenheit. And you'll see, we have a close-up here, you'll see water bubbling out of this spring in just a minute when the wind clears a bit. And this is coming, because what happens is these streams, actually, there it is, right, you can see it in the middle. These streams actually flow over hot volcanic ash and become hot. And then they work their way to the surface, and people will go to these places for good health and also just to have the fun of hard-boiling their egg in the steam. And so we did that as well. You'll see my dad, and you'll see Pam, and I think my sister-in-law there. But you go to this place, and it's just, and it smells terrible because it's all sulfur steam. But that's what they do there. This is probably about an hour or two north of Tokyo. And again, people everywhere, the Japanese love touristy stuff, and so they're peeling their hard-boiled eggs, and what they do is they'll peel it, cut it in half, put salt on it, and they'll eat it right there. And there's, of course, they're always taking pictures. The Asians always take pictures. They're doing that. And there's to the left is my wife, and to the right is Paula, and in the back is my father. And he's explaining to us, and you'll see that the egg is black because the steam actually makes the shell black from the sulfur steam, but then when you open it up inside, it's just like a nice hard-boiled egg. So you do it for the experience. Now, this is Tokyo. Lawn care is not a big business in Tokyo because there's not lawns. And this is taken from one of the towers there, and this is one of the downtown areas. There's 8 downtown areas in Tokyo. major shopping centers, major areas, and so land is very, very expensive. Some of the most expensive land in the world is in downtown Tokyo. Years ago, a piece of frontage space in the downtown Ginza was about $10,000 per inch and a half. Now it's far more than that. Millions and millions of dollars is the cost of land. And in fact, parking is a problem. And so you'll see in a few minutes, there's a parking lot on the roof of a building where the first guy to come to work that day, he has to be the last person out because the cars are jammed up there. When there's a fire, they don't try to save the block. They don't try to save the house. They try to save the block. And house numbers are numbered not according to where they are, but according to when they're built. And so there's often you'll see fire trucks or ambulances that are lost, and people trying to find where they're picking somebody up or fighting the fire because there's no rhyme or reason to the street names and to the house numbers. And a lot of houses are with, there's that parking lot I told you about. So first guy in has to be the last guy out. A lot of roof parking. We have amusement parks on roofs of buildings. There's golf driving ranges on roofs of buildings because there's just no space. There are golf courses if you like golf, but tee time may cost you thousands of dollars just to get out to a golf course because land is so precious. Tokyo is always in a rush hour. This is a territorial headquarters parking lot, and so we would drive the car in, and then what happens is this parking lot I think holds about 20 cars, and it's like a Ferris wheel. And so the cars are parked in their respective spots, and then when you go to work, you just leave your car there, and you tell the attendant what number slot you're in, and he'll move it down for the next car to come in. You'll see a mirror there, so when you pull up, you can see you're not going to hit the wall. And parking there, this is again 30 years ago, was about $280 a month to park in this parking garage that THU actually leased. And because the roads are small, what happens is it's not safe to back out into busy roads. And so as you'll see in a moment, they place there a turntable. So you back out into the turntable, and the turntable will turn your car around so that you're facing nose out when you head into traffic. In certain places in Tokyo, there's no place for a bus to turn around. I've seen turntables that are the size of city buses that turn buses around when they got to the end of their route to begin the route again. You'll notice also that a lot of Japanese cars have their mirrors on the fenders and not up close like we have them. They say their eyes have to travel less. Now, this is Shinjuku. Shinjuku is one of the busiest train stations in the world. This train station has, again, about 20 or 30 bus lines that come into it. It has about 14 railroad tracks above ground that run parallel to each other, another 10 or 12 underground that run parallel to each other. And there was a survey done between the rush hours, which is between 8:20 and 8:40 in the morning, and they counted about 65,000 people that went through this train station during the 20 minutes of the rush hour. This is not a special time. I picked a random day to just walk down to this train station and take videos. So this is not a special event. This is not a ball game. This is simply the day-to-day traffic going through Shinjuku train station. We have a Christmas kettle outside this train station. It's believed that 1 million people walk by this Christmas kettle every day during the Christmas season when we have a kettle outside of this train station. You'll notice they walk on the left as we walk on the right. And you'll notice a lot of people wearing dark clothes. Of course, it's just out of the way. You walk on the left, there's always crowds at this train station. When you get up to the platform where the trains are, you don't hope to get the next train. You hope to get the one after that because the people are already lined up for the next train coming. You'll know what number you're on, and so there's marks on the platform that tell you where the door is going to be when the train stops. So these people here are lined up for the next train, and so they'll wait for the train to come. During rush hour, a train might be sitting at the station. You'll be able to see the train that's just pulled out. You'll see the train that's coming behind it. Every 2 minutes or so, a train will arrive at this train station, bringing thousands and thousands of people to work. You may have heard about the people that push people on trains. It's not a fable, it's a fact. It's a fact of life. And being a 6-foot tall American as myself, I rather enjoyed this because I try to be the last one on, and I push myself back into the train so I.
We have a bit of disruption in the audio because we had to turn the cassette over. In the video, we can see a continuation of the packing in of passengers on the train, and then we move on to the hotel room, which is about an 8-mat size and contains a table in the middle of the floor with the floor pads to sit around the table in a tea pot. They have futon type bed mats that are stored in the closet. And the room has a television, telephone, and we will see Major Ted, who is putting the bed mats together for Major Pam and Paula. And you see the small pillows, which are bean filled and a bit hard to sleep on. Also, Major Ted's wearing a hotel kimono, and Paula models it. We then go on to a shrine, which is a Buddhist statue. It originally was in a building, but during a hurricane, the building blew away, and the fact that the statue remained added to the God mystique of the shrine. People bring gifts to get God's attention for prayer, oranges, flowers, incense, money. And basically, they operate under fear of God and not a sense of His love and care for them. Then we move on to Shinto shrine area, and we pick up on Major Ted's narration.
Baby dedications, those things like that are Shinto. This is another shrine, and they're putting their offering in there. Oh, this is the same daibutsu. This is a shrine. You may have seen those gates like that, and like you go to Disney, you may see a big red gate. It's called a tori. A tori indicates that there's a shrine nearby. And at this particular shrine, this is a shrine to a former emperor, I believe. And it's interesting because there's a lot of Buddhist and Shinto practices that can almost be parallel to the Jewish practices in the Old Testament. They believe that before they go to worship, they have to go to a place to cleanse themselves. And so there's a place to the right, which we'll see in a minute, where they can wash their mouths out, they can wash their hands, and they can become pure with water before they go. This is the place right there. And then once they purify themselves, then they're clean enough to go up the steps to the shrine. And they believe that once someone dies, their spirits are still here. And they believe if they don't pray to the spirit, if they don't give alms to the spirit or provide gifts for the spirits can cause them illness, can cause them death. And so whenever something happens in their life, they feel they somehow have displeased a spirit. One belief is that there's 4 gods, the gods of the north, south, east, and west. If you cut a tree down, you've got to make sure you know what direction that tree is going to go and offer a present to the god of that direction so you won't offend that god. So if your tree is going to fall to the north, you've got to contact the god of the north and offer a prayer to them so they won't be offended because the tree falls in their direction. In many ways, a religion of fear, a religion of making sure you don't do the wrong thing. It's not a religion of love. It's not a religion of real peace. It's mainly a religion of staying away from having damage in your life that's done. When you go in this particular shrine, you can buy for just a few pennies a fortune, kind of like a fortune cookie that we may get in a restaurant, but it's not a fun thing because some of the fortunes that they buy have good fortunes and some of them have bad fortunes on them. If they have good fortunes, they believe the gods are looking down upon them and they take that fortune home believing with all their heart that fortune is going to come true. But if it's a bad fortune, and it's something that would be evil upon them, they believe that it won't happen to them if they somehow tie that fortune to something in the grounds of that shrine. On that lantern there are some fortunes that are tied, that people have tied there, hoping and praying that those bad fortunes won't come to pass and won't take place in their life. You'll see there's a tree there, a small bush that is covered with bad fortunes that people have tied there, hoping that it won't happen to them. Very sad faith that they have. This is again the offering place where people place their offering. You'll see there's some fortunes tied to the little sticks of the little entrances there. Those are fortunes tied there. But people put their offering in there. All temples have these. Shrines have these. This is a shrine, another shrine, to a former emperor called Meiji. He was emperor a few hundred years ago. And they believe he resides in a mirror located behind the Holy of Holies that only the priest can go to. And that's what they call it. And people come to this shrine and they will fill out these pieces of paper called Onegai Goto. I have one here that I picked up when I went there. It's simply a piece of paper that says on it, my prayer request. And so they'll write on that their prayer request. They'll give it to the priest, and the priest will take your prayer request to this mirror and pray on your behalf. I had a friend who went with me. I went with him to the shrine. He was a Buddhist. And he said, I want to pray that I pass my college entrance exam. He wrote that down on his prayer request, and he passed his college entrance exam. And he said, my God answered my prayer. What do you do with that? This is another shrine, and here the incense is blowing, and they believe that if they're facing a malady, or facing a pain in their body, if they somehow put that smoke on the part of their body where they're having a pain, that the gods will relieve that pain for them. And so a lot of people are there just wanting to get this incense smell on them so they can receive a blessing from their God. You pay a little money, and you put the incense in there, and then it blows all the time. As you walk up here, there's a lot of vendors, people selling things at the temple. You may have heard a story about people selling things at a temple. At this temple, there's a whole line of stores where you can buy prayer beads, you can buy worship items, you can buy knickknacks, all the way walking up to this temple for worship. These people are standing here worshiping. Beyond there, there's an idol in there. And beyond there is, again, the Holy of Holies, where the priest goes to take the prayers of the people to the deity they're praying to. You may see people throwing money toward their offering box. And again, remember the widow's mite who Jesus' disciples saw her put things in. Very similar in the Japanese. You can see what gifts the Japanese may give to their gods when they come and worship at this temple. Japanese cemetery. The country is so small, everyone's cremated except the emperor's family. And this is a small cemetery, and each of those wooden sticks are prayers that the family members have written and put on those prayers, hoping that when they leave this earth, they'll receive the blessings of those prayers. In front of each of the graves are cups, and under there is where the urns are placed with the ashes of the deceased. There's cups for flowers. There's places for incense. There's places for fruit. You'll go through here, you'll see fruit. You'll see cans of beer. You see cans of Coke. And they believe that the person who died will receive of your sacrifice and receive the blessing that you have in providing these things for the deceased person, so they will not come back and harm you or not come back and bring bad luck for you. The writing on this stone is actually the name of the person who's buried there. That's a very, very old tombstone there. In front is a can of beer and a cup of tea, actually placed in front of that one. And some family member is still, I'm sure, out of obligation, putting flowers there, hoping that the loved one won't come and haunt them, come back from death and haunt them. This is kind of the expanse of the cemetery. Again, there's no space, so things are very, very tight, very, very crowded. In a minute, you'll see a family grave where it'd be a family grave, and you'll have family members who will be buried all around there. That building in the back is actually the shrine that does the funerals for those who are buried here. And that's a family grave there, a place, the round thing in the middle is a place for incense. And you'll see the other family graves around that, but the large monument is for the family that's buried there. They're cremated. The question was if they're buried like the Jews standing up. They're cremated, so they're cremated. This is commissioning. Those of you in the Salvation Army, commissioning that year is in March, and we had a relatively small session that year. We had one cadet was being commissioned, and this is his session flag. His name was Katsumi Yamamoto, and so this is the flag bearer. And behind him is going to be the soon-to-be commissioned lieutenant. That's him, a single man. He wrote the session song. He gave the session speech. He did the session play. Actually, he did. There was a play actually the night before, and he starred in it. And other people were in it too, but he was the star of the play because he was the only cadet in the session. To his left, or to our left, are the gentleman holding the flag and the young lady. That's the first-year cadets who are going to become second-year cadets at this commissioning. Behind them is the territorial commander. And now this is his commissioning. You'll notice that, of course, they salute like they do here in the States. And notice the bowing. The commissioner on the left will nod, and the new lieutenant will bow lower because the one who is lower on the totem pole always bows a little bit lower than the one in charge. The commissioner is now giving his name, saying, Katsumi Yamamoto, you're being sent to the Yokosuka Corps. Yokosuka is a place in the south. He says, you're going to be the corps officer there. He's saying that you're going to a divisional headquarters corps, and you're going to be the corps officer at Yokosuka. He hands his commission to him with both hands. The cadet receives it with both hands, which is the formal way of receiving something of honor from someone above you. So he's announcing his appointment now. I checked with the former territorial commander just last week. This young man is still an officer. He's a major. He's serving in a corps in a place called Yokosuka, which is down south. He's single, and the territorial commander tells me that he's very faithful in his corps. It's a small corps called the Fukuoka Corps in Kyushu. He's not a flashy person, but he doesn't attract much attention, but he's a very sincere and a very loyal officer. So this is his commissioning, and he's now be retiring soon. So that's the story of Japan. And if you don't mind, we'll just have a brief word of prayer, and then, of course, I'll be hanging around if you have any questions. Oh, we have some door prizes. Thank you. I just want to respect their time. If you have, and look at your placemat, if you have a placemat there that looks like this, of course it has Mount Fuji on it, but if you have a placemat that has the moon above Mount Fuji, if you could raise your hand, we've got a gift for you. Gary has one. And Pam, Jackie has one here. Jackie has one.
You have one. The moon, you have one.
Okay, I think we have one more. Right.
Your placemat with the moon on the top.
Yep.
Rita?
Yep.
Whose was it? It was over here.
Do you have any more books? Do you have any more books, or we?
We have another one. Let me get one.
So, 2 more books? The book we're giving out is actually a book called The Common People's Gospel, written by the very first Salvation Army officer in Japan. His name is Gunpei Yamamoto, and he was the first soldier in Japan and the first territorial commander, first Japanese territorial commander. And so he wrote about the simple gospel and how that gospel can be preached to people.
Is it written in Japanese?
It's written in English. Yeah, it was translated for the rest of us. Want to do this too? And Everyone at this table, I've got a small crane. This is you've heard of origami, which is the paper folding art. A crane, which is, it's a bird. A crane is a symbol of peace. If you ever go to Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, however you want to pronounce it, there's a peace memorial in memory of those who lost their lives in Hiroshima, and they have 1,000 of these all strung together at a memorial, telling the world that they pray for peace around the world. And so we have some of these at this table. So if you're here, you're welcome to have one. And we'll...
You learned to do that, didn't you?
I did some, but my fingers are too fat. I couldn't really do it well. I did a couple things, but I wasn't skilled at that at all. And then we'll just close with a word of scripture. I'll read the English on the back. For what shall a man be profited if he shall gain the whole world and forfeit his life? This is translated by Gunpei Yamamoto when he translated the scriptures into English for you and for me. Let's pray. God, we thank you for each person here today. We thank you for Meiji Yamamoto, who's serving faithfully in a small corps in South Japan. We saw him be commissioned many, many years ago. Thank you for our world services here. We give toward the work around the world, and we thank you for the dedication of people who are serving around the world as well as in the country of Japan. Thank you for our time together today, and bless us as we continue to serve you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. God bless you.
Let's thank Major and